Today is another day, a great day to be seen. And in the building, our guest today, as we talk about the state of education, is Brother Andre Nichols. We're pulling Dave in from a whole nother planet. And we're going to get right to this. But before we do, a moment of silence go out to the young men who lost their lives today in a senseless shooting in Virginia. And as we are, really talking about this very thing daily, great question my son asked me. He said, man, what can we do, or what are you doing, right, that is solving? He said, because a friend of mine was telling me about how there are a lot of single white fathers, too, that's not seeing their kids. I say, son, listen, this fatherhood piece is legit all the way across the board.
Yes, it is.
It's not a game that has a color to it. I know some, put it this way, son, we can't carry the child support system.
That was one way to put it, huh?
That's the best way I can put it. We're not the ones carrying that child support system. And but we're attacked, all fathers and the whole nine. So I really, gave him an idea to as to what we was doing and why we were painting the solution. Dave, you on?
I'm on.
All right, brother Dave. Right, and so we was having this conversation, but like I told him, I said, everything you see that is wrong, that is happening, that involves children, is connected to fathers. Everything. Say now, you could paint the picture from rapists, domestic violence, abuser, the whole nine. Whatever you paint is going to come up next to that father. It's big. With that being said, Dave, Andre is in the building. Brother Andre Nichols, friend, brother, understands exactly what education is about, and we're going to get into this conversation. As a matter of fact, I passed somebody your information. A brother of mine, Russell Holmes, is going to reach out to you, okay, right? Because he's building a school. And I said the best reference I could give him was Andre Nichols.
It's kind. Dave, how you doing over there?
How you doing?
I'm fine. Pleasure.
So, Andre, how you feeling today, brother?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, and it's a blessing and honor to be back. Just to spend time with you and reach your audience on some topics out there that I know that are in people's hearts and minds right now. So I'm ready to get it in.
Yeah, that education is key. So we're gonna jump right into it. Dave, how you feeling today?
Oh, pretty good. Life is good. Still standing, so I ain't complaining.
That's right. Good. So Andre, with this education piece, we understand that it's kind of. I posted the other day. It's funny that we having this conversation. My sinus is on bump, so excuse me. But I posted the other day, the 2004 election has impacted education, the workforce development, the whole nine. And I watched that. I watched the No Child Left Behind, the impact of thousands of anybody can open up a school. I watched that. And I watched our kids be fully exposed in education. We discovered there were some reading issues in Michigan. But more importantly, the workforce took a hit. The makeup packet became the most dangerous thing to me that we gave these kids, because in the makeup packet was no accountability. I'm an honor student on paper, but only because of the makeup packet. You know what I mean? Right? And so that became very, very impactful to the youth. So the first question is, we know the pandemic hit. What do you think we learned about schools coming out of the pandemic?
Oh, you came out the gate loaded, huh?
Yeah.
Well, first let me say that the pandemic in itself was like a Band-Aid. Everything that we, what you might say, discovered was actually already there. But you peel back that Band-Aid, and now you are forced to reckon with it on a more personal and intense level. When you talk about social and emotional learning and trauma and anxieties and depression, those things have existed well beyond the pandemic. At the same moment, during that time, we were given the opportunity to slow down and find some balance. And so to a certain degree, it actually welcomed some conversations that needed to take place, particularly to how have we been addressing the needs of our students within the confines of a school building. So this is not in any rank order, but I will, since I did mention social emotional learning, that piece right there has been pretty significant because there have been gaps in what our school communities have been providing students. They've been seen as these intellectual institutions, but we haven't been giving as much emphasis on the non-cognitive aspect of the human being, and not just students, but also the adults in the building too. So when we're talking about trauma, anxieties, depression, we have escaped and haven't filled in those gaps of building resiliency and giving individuals the tools that they need in order to find that balance and say that it's okay for me to attend to the essence and the human element of who I am first. And the pandemic, when we start seeing and hearing from students talking about how they're feeling, now it's like, okay, what do we do as the institution to help us bridge this gap? One of the things that online learning provided was it was the first moment in time that we got the chance to see what was going on inside of the home. The camera, when turned on, it is showing what's taking place. So we've known about the elements of poverty and brokenness in the homes and things of that. But when that camera is right there, now you're seeing it verbatim. And it really just forced us to continue to reckon with what tools have we been providing our schools and our students to be successful and in a holistic approach, because it's not just in one remedy, but in a multiplicity of places that our schools have been thrown into being a part of that solution. And I do want to make certain that I state that the school is a part of the solution. We cannot speak to our schools as if they are the remedy. They're just a part of. So, but the pandemic unearthed a lot that we're contending with right now. As a matter of fact, I sit on the school board, and one of the things that happened when you saw this flux of money come through ESSER and ESSER 2, if schools did not have strategic plans and emphasis, you were sitting on stockpiles of cash without any agenda. And it really called us out at the same moment to say, whoa, I have this money, but what am I going to do with it?
Right.
You remember the movie Brewster's Million?
Right.
When he had all that loot?
Right.
And it's like, man, he's buying stamps and
right. What do I do?
And it happened with schools too. It made certain that schools put together strategic aims so that there should be nothing that whatever happens that we don't have a plan for it, you know. But the pandemic, it actually opened up a door for a lot of things, and those are just a few right there.
Yeah, part of that where you say part, and Dave, if you want to add, you can add. Part of that, part of the solution has always been pieces to the pie. So education, we always needed education to do it. Well, the problem I think came in was the parent wasn't doing their part when they handed their part over to the school. And it created a lot of problems for the teachers, administrative, because now we have to deal with schools are having to deal with conduct and a high level of character and problems. And like you say, the trauma, and right, because kids were coming in from, man, crazy environments to come into school to try to learn in the school. Like when I was over at the middle school, when Cam was in middle school, like I watched a young man play with the teachers every day, every time I was there. Excuse me. And so he would go from, fall out that class, right? They send him to the next class, fall out that class, then they'll go to the one mean teacher, and by the time he got to her, right, all of it stopped. And then, now these are classes that they passed him through, and then he was on the basketball team. Now he couldn't have been on my basketball team, right? We don't play that. Homie don't play that, because I equate basketball and class, brains and bronze together. Like you gotta have some academics to play for me, right? So we learned that early in the game. But when I saw that, I realized basically he was passed, right? And then that come back to now in our mentoring program, we see the same thing where, and this is no, I don't know how to really put this, but I see it more in the males where they are not up to par in reading and math and even thinking for themselves. Like right now, we're dealing with a high level of not thinking for yourself. My next question is accountability, because I love that word. I'm constantly working on that word, even with myself. Am I accountable, right? What do we need from parents now? Like, what can the parents do different for education?
So, a friend, a colleague of mine, Nicholas South, he uses a frame called the three-legged stool. And when we talk about the equitable accountability of balance, he references as there's school management, there is student management, and then there's parent management. And from the parental standpoint, the formula is real simple to a certain degree. See that your student gets to school on time and is ready to learn. It's really that simple. No one expects a parent to know anything about trigonometry. That's the school's management responsibility. But the premium of education should be dropped off at school and then facilitated on school grounds. Then you also have student effort.
Right.
And the gaps that we've been witnessing has been the accountability has been thrust upon the school for so much. The school is feeding students, clothing students, keeping them before school, after school, social emotional learning, and dealing with the mental capacity and agency for students. And this is a sad statement I'm making here, but we need to be careful because we are placing the school in position of being a surrogate parent and not too far away from being your student's ward of court. Because when you take a look at everything that you're asking the students to, the school to do and mimic, it is replacing what has traditionally been the responsibilities of the family. And you mentioned discipline because I want to harp on something that it was Dr. Jalea Hare. She said in 2007 during Tavis Smiley's State of Black America, when we remove discipline out of the schools, we found something out. We found out that people were scared, that teachers were scared of principals scared of the superintendent afraid of the school board afraid of parents afraid of the kids, and the kids ain't afraid of no damn body. And that's what we're witnessing right now. The reverence, the respect of academia that should be dropped off at the school is not prevalent the way that it historically has been. Take a look at how many videos are out there of kids cursing out adults, of kids placing their hands on teachers. We would have never thought that we would got to a point of this happening. I'm just 48, so right. I'm speaking from schooling in the 80s, 90s. But even then, if you and I had a beef, we would say, "I see you after school." Oh, I see you after school.
Right.
You know what that meant.
Right. It was on.
Not anymore. Why is it that the institution, the school itself, has a safe haven for students to fight? I mean, let's ponder on that for a second. A student will actually think that it's okay to conduct themselves in such a violent way inside of a school building. That's almost like someone saying it's okay to fight in a church or a synagogue. Where has the reverence towards academia, the integrity towards education? How have we gotten to such a low thing and a low point where students no longer see the school as a place of learning, but as a social arena?
Woo! I got an answer. I got one. Dave, you want to say something? You want to add? Because I got one. I got a hot one for you.
Yeah, I like the three-leg concept. But I think that, again, you're right. The responsibility of the educators is to provide the education. The responsibility of holding one accountable is on the parent. But if the parents don't hold themselves accountable, then they're not presenting the model for them to emulate. So, and then you got the other basis of fear. And I guess I would go back as far, I'm a little older, so I go all the way back to when there was prayer within the school system now, and the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, again, I know many people have different perspectives on that, but what we were saying was there was a level of structure and responsibility and accountability that was done to hold people accountable to something that is bigger than themselves.
Right.
And unfortunately, we see that there's nothing that's bigger than the young people. They see themselves as bigger than you.
Hey, so Dave, and to your point too, and that was an excellent thing you just brought up. When prayer was removed out of our schools in 1962, by 65 we saw teenage pregnancy, suicide, and truancy triple within 3 years. Within 3 years. Now, some people might say it was a cause and effect, but one thing for certain is that there's a relationship when there's a moment for students to find that balance and to meditate and focus on one thing starting out in the day, and it being enforced in a fashion of not necessarily just forcing a belief system upon you, but again, going back to protecting the academia and the institution. This is who we are. But you remove that, and now the building is it's beyond chaotic, but we didn't even replace it with anything. When it came to discipline, you know what we replaced that with? Special education. That's what we replaced. When we removed discipline out of schools, we replaced it in special education. And when we remove prayer out of school, we didn't replace it with nothing. We didn't replace it with anything.
So who applied that though? So let's go back, like you said. So the intent, what was the intent? Because if 62 they removed that, 65 was the first Juvenile Act. Juvenile Act come into play. 68 Civil Rights Movement. 69 no fault divorce. It was a plan, right? So we're gonna destabilize, right? But what was removed when you say discipline, you literally start removing the men. Because the man applies the discipline. That's what we do. So what has happened is now any man in a building with education, he's the guy that they send all the kids to. Right? So when you look at the statistics around males in education, what they say, black males is only what, 2%, 25% in education? Black male, if that, right? But if you go look at other countries, the males are the teachers. Primarily the teachers. 70% in Africa are male teachers. Why? Because of the discipline. So here, you remove the discipline. So where do the children go? We apply the strength. The girls go up. The boys go down. The boys fill in all these gaps. You're talking suicide. You're talking depression. You're talking, right now, mass shootings. You're talking the perpetuation of the fathers. We continue to remove that discipline to where now the school system isn't really safe. And who's primarily behind attacking the schools and mass shootings? Males. You removed us. And it ain't going to be a pretty picture if you continue this route. Because while these males, as we are talking about, they're literally sitting around practicing violence. So you're not going to have a significant change until you, as a culture, as a country, as an American country, value your males, men, boys, husbands, fathers. And they better hurry up. You know what I mean? But that is what also is impacting that piece, and that's why I said I had an answer. Okay, next one. What is the current state of education in the city of Detroit, brother? And this is juicy because you only got so many thousand now. Everybody done ate off that city.
I'm trying to.
They trying to, right?
Yeah.
But these kids, they're out now. They're in all these other areas, right? Some of these schools look like medical wards. So what is the state of the education in the city of Detroit?
You know, one of the things that let's go back to when Kwame was in office.
Okay.
There was discussion if the school should fall under the mayor's office. Do you remember those discussions?
Yes, sir.
And so move forward, when Nikolai Vitti took over DPSCD, I think one of the things that he did that was fairly brilliant, because the conversation had started to resurface, the schools falling under the mayor's office, is he ensured that DPSCD was moving in the direction of what Mayor Dugan wants for the city of Detroit. And he somewhat stripped learning from K+ and said, if you are a citizen of the city of Detroit, learning for you is free. Whether you are in pre-kindergarten or looking at post-secondary education. And we have incubators and hubs as well as you matriculate through our system. So if you want something for yourself in culinary arts, aerospace, business, we have places within our high schools, and we'll bus you there too, so that not only you career ready, but these initiatives also align to the position of where the city of Detroit is headed as well. Hospitality has to be a huge thing and part of a hub of downtown. That's how we got the Super Bowl. We were able to say there's places to stay, there's places to eat, and so forth.
Right.
But we also have to build the intellectual capacity in the city so that it is attractive for business and industry to set up shop. We can't afford to continue to lose out on your Amazons, on your Apples and things of that. We have to show that we have the intellectual capacity here, and that is why in Michigan's strategic plan for being a top 10 in 10, one of the emphasis is on post-secondary ed credentials, so that we can show that we have the brain power. And so when we talk about what's going on in the city of Detroit through DPSCD, one of the things that you're seeing is a strategic plan to build the intellectual capacity for citizens of the city. And also keeping in mind, too, what census information is showing. You're going to see schools pop up in Southwest Detroit, not only because of a plant that's coming there, but also census information is showing that it's a growing population. And so, and I mentioned DPSCD because your traditional public schools have a lot more power when it comes to movement. And when I say power here, we're talking about legacy and tradition and resources. Your charter schools can't move as readily as your traditional public schools because they don't have the coin. Right. And so DPSCD is going to be building new schools in Southwest Detroit. Your charter schools won't be able to just do that. They're going to they might move, but they're not in a position to build. Right. You know, some other things that you're seeing in the city is a greater emphasis on literacy and mental health. Going back to your original question in the pandemic, some things that were unearthed. These are becoming part of the plans for education in Detroit to build upon us being more than literate, you know, but and also building a resiliency through mental health and those mental health services. So I actually feel pretty strong that for those in the city, you give this 7 to 10 years, you're going to begin seeing more businesses set up shop and more of our students who are prepared for those positions if they decide to stay here is really what's key, because a lot of people educate in Detroit but then move out the city. So how can this plan also encompass ways for people to become formally educated but then also stay here too? That's going to be a whole nother conversation and plan. But you kind of have to be pleased with what's on paper and what you're seeing versus matters just being rhetoric. And so I'm pretty optimistic of what good can happen. I think that it's going to take, and going back to what Dave was talking about, parental engagement and things of that, and student effort, because we're going to need to challenge our students a little bit more to get more and better out of them, the same way we've been asking everybody else.
So, yeah, we went to a conference, the MCAN conference, and everyone's having the problem with unmotivated youth, right? The college access network, and everyone's having this issue with unmotivated youth. They're trying to figure out what it is. They said this was the biggest population of kids who don't even want to drive, right? And so, you know, of course you can cite, you know, again, the pandemic. But what you said was key. I just feel, I'm going to feel a lot better about that process and that plan when truancy isn't a factor. When we decide to put a mandate on showing up to school, right? I think, in my opinion, being on time and being in school every day, connected to your grades and your academics, I feel like that's a major plus for the youth and for the businesses and the systems and things like that, because you got to be every day. Like even in our mentoring program, you got to be there every day. If I'm there, you got to be there. And we find that we're so casual about this that we don't understand how we teach our children to be truant, We don't get that. I don't feel like it today. The I don't feel like it is really messing up a lot of people. I don't feel like it today. I'm gonna take the day off. And we telling them, yeah, take that day. Well, okay, let's evaluate that though, because truancy is a major, 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 major issue. Is on the job. You get a check Friday, you don't come back. You think that job gonna be there, but you jumping from job to job. They went from an average that kids was averaging 9. They talking about the average kid will have 17 jobs in their adult life right now. So when we are making the improvements, we want truancy not to be there. Let's really I'd rather take that. I need you to come to school, sister, and I need you to come to school every day.
That's not enough.
It's not enough, but I need you to come every day.
Now, when I say it's not enough, we got to get past rhetoric now, and it's unfortunate that this is going to end up transcending into public policy, because asking individuals to do things over and over and getting no movement, you're going to now have to do something that's going to force a new paradigm.
Okay.
So imagine this.
I got you.
So imagine this, and I'm throwing this out there arbitrarily.
Right.
A new way of being, a system that will attach truancy attendance to fines and community service. See, that's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's different. For days missed, now it could result in one and or those things occurring. What's going to need to take place is something that forces the paradigm shift. And the mechanisms that we've been exalting are novel, but they're not good enough. How much more money are we going to spend on attendance officials and them knocking on doors? How much more money do we have to spend on robocalls and automated emails? It's not doing anything to force a paradigm shift. Now we're going to end up having to get radical if we really want to see a change. There has to be recourse. You mentioned going to work, for example. Well, if you're late for work, you could eventually end up getting fired. There's recourse. There's something that will happen if this continues.
Uh-huh.
And within our schools, there is no recourse.
Right.
The only thing that eventually will happen is after so many days, the student is no longer in that particular district's system. I guess you could say removed, and that's it.
What was your attendance policy in high school?
I was at school every day, so I don't even know.
Right. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Dave, what was your attendance policy?
Yeah, as you said, that go way, way back. So, that go way back to the Stone Age, right? But they held you accountable. And I believe it was 3 targets out for one day. And I think if you make X amount of days, you were expelled and your parents had to come up. So, but that in itself, accountability. I like all the nice systems put in place, and I like all the concepts. Again, I'm not a naysayer about anything, but I think until we can find a way to really hold the parents accountable, but you can't hold someone accountable. You can't give what you don't have. And with the parents of today, not to take anything from them in the sense of how they can do. Mm-hmm. What you look at the parents are old, even with the lack of education that they had a sense of accountability and responsibility to themselves, to their children, to their community. So there was always an operation of people moving in sync. So if you didn't go to school, why you at home? Your neighbors said, why you at home? And they would let your parents know you didn't go to school. And then if you were late, the teachers would call back. So again, as I started earlier, these fears have been created. And I remember one of my friends had won what they call it, I guess, some best teacher award of the year in Michigan, and she had been in the system a long time. But when she went to school to do her thing, she got drugged down the hall. And not only were the students just observing, the people who ran the classroom was observing, and eventually she just decided to go on and retire. So nobody's being held accountable. There is no village anymore. Until we can work together in harmony with each other and hold their parents accountable, our community accountable, and go back to what Calvin said, we bring men together. We're going to struggle. We're going to struggle. You know, I mean, think about it. This is the most advanced era in history. You push a button and you can get anything you want. Yet this seems to be the most primitive in thinking and self-control and ability to create and think for themselves than ever. Now, what's wrong with that picture? We didn't have none of this. You got kids can't even read the two-letter words, if and but and on, and it's just sad. So where did that come from? I mean, by the time I was in first grade, I'll read most of the kids, you know, because my parents were invested. Matter of fact, one parent at that time. So you know, if there's no investment in the child's life, and they're not being held accountable, then you got to struggle. And I don't know if these are nice systems, and I think that's what happens. We have nice systems, and they only affect a small percentage of people. As you talked about, quite a few of the systems that have been in place for years, and only thing that we see, the ones that produce the negative outcomes, the one we have the massive use of, and the ones that should be producing the positive outcome, they kind of get swept under the rug. So somewhere along the line, the heads have to come together. The meeting of the minds have to happen, and then there has to be something on a larger scale. How can kids not think negative when they're bombarded nonstop with thousands of negative messages? Children are not making movies. Most cases, children are not making these violent videos. These are adults who are parents. What's wrong with this picture? You know, so I like to look at things from a more practical way, because obviously I'm not at the level you're at, my friend. But at the end of the day, what is practical that we can do? There has to be a coming together, and I don't see that happening. You know, officials come out, they kiss babies, they kiss grandmas, they hold hands. And here's in our officials, we don't even hold, when we voted last week, we don't hold these people accountable. They'll be put in the office, and you'll probably see the mayor, the governor. You might hear from them, but all the other officials who are making the laws, you don't hear no more from them. And we don't have to give them, they don't have a report card either. So you see them next campaign time. So a lot of people are not being held accountable, and the recipients of that are our children.
Thank you. It seems culturally responsive teaching and instruction is something being discussed more and more. What exactly is it, and why is it so important?
So there needs to be somewhat of a history lesson there. So we go back to Brown versus Board of Education in 1955. This was the landmark case that desegregated our schools. Would people be familiar with, there was actually 13 families. They're filed alphabetically. Brown was just the first. And these families had already been assimilated in working class America, and many of them had already lived in white suburban areas. And the concern that they were having was, I'm paying taxes right now and right here. And the school across the street has the internet, and has the pool, and it has the Chromebooks and all these wondrous things. But I have to send my kid to the school 5 miles away that's in a barn, so to speak, right? And we were never after desegregation. The building will become desegregated once I walk in. That's a byproduct of it. What we have always been after has been a quality education, has been resources and opportunity for our kids. Every parent wants what is best for their kids. We wanted what was inside of that building versus what it was that we were receiving. However, we weren't prepared for the other side of that. There was no diversity committees, DEI committees and diversity trainings in 1950. So yes, the schools became desegregated, but the level of preparedness for blacks to be in schools was not there. And so I say that because when you mention culturally responsive teaching, here it is now 68 years later, we are having discussions around how do we teach all the kids in a classroom.
Right.
And because that's essentially what it is, taking person's cultures and interests and who they are and utilizing that so that it informs instruction, because culturally responsive teaching is a tool. It is a tool that will help teachers allow students to be cognitively busy, and to make connections, because our brain is wired to want to make connections. And so that is what CRT does. But we've gotten here based off of desegregation. And what was on the other side of that was unpreparedness. And so we're still seeing tools enter the classroom, teachers being taught on various dimensions and ways of how to reach all students in their classroom, the different modalities as well as levels, whether it be CRT, whether it be differentiated instruction, a whole lot of tools that are just now and still coming to the forefront 68 years later after that landmark decision, and it just makes sense because teachers need to be equipped with the tools to make connections for the kids so they're in a better place to be cognitively busy and to learn.
Absolutely.
Let me say this.
Go ahead.
If you give the teachers the equipment to do what they need to do, but if they don't get the support to implement those tools, it's like giving a soldier all his gear and then say you get out in the war zone and he can't use his weapon. The Geneva Convention, the new one, calls us that we had to not fire till we saw the client, till we saw the enemy, and that put us in a very compromising position because we lost a lot of soldiers because you almost, as they say, tied their hands. It would appear to me, as based on even in your intro, that even the people you provide the resources for, their hands are still tied because something is going on within the children's lives, the parents' lives, because parents now come up there and they ready to beat you down. So that even puts a fear in your personnel.
Yeah.
So what are they doing to untie their hands?
Yeah, they want to fight because that's where that immaturity, unaccountability, untapped, unraised, ununderstanding, unknowing is at. That's where it's at. That's where it's coming from. And that's a big issue. That's what the schools are dealing with. I mean, again, we go back. We could say it. As soon as we decided that we was going to remove discipline, as soon as we decided we was going to remove fathers, as soon as we decided we wanted to remove men, we created a dynamic that will impact and hurt families and children. Well, this is where we come in at because we're saying here's a solution, which is, it's hard to accept because you've been conditioned in this mindset, in this presence, and how we see it. So I've been conditioned to believe the teacher don't like me. I've been conditioned to believe that I don't need this education. I've been watching YouTube, so I believe everything is controversial and conspiracies, right? I don't know what to believe no more, right? Because I'm not picking up the book to actually get the real information anyway. So reading and literacy, it comes back to visual literacy is off as well because what I'm seeing, I'm forming opinion from no literacy to say this is what's really happening, and we got to do better. But we got to do this again, Andre. We checking out here, but tell everybody where they can meet you at, Brother Sharp. And if there's one last thing you'd like to share, go ahead and share it.
If there was anything I could just share, is just let's be very prayerful and concerning of our educators out there right now. They're tired. There's so much responsibilities and blame that's been put on them. We've heard of the teacher shortages. There's also figures right now that 55% of your administrators are thinking about leaving the field earlier than expected, and we have to put a greater reverence on our educators and putting them in a position to thrive, not allowing them to come to school and being disrespected and being violated. We're forcing adults out of a profession because we've been scared to challenge the family dynamic in our students. And when is enough going to be enough? you know, and we think it's horrific now. Wait 2 years from now, you have universities that have been eliminating their early education programs. You have Teach for America, which normally has released 12,000 new teachers into the workforce. That's went from 12,000 to 8 and to 6, and now they're saying they only have 2,000 in a cohort coming up. So we're losing educators, and we're not replacing them with the same amount of atrocity. So let's be prayerful of our educators out there right now, because they're on the front lines and they're tired, and we got to do better. We have to make certain that our kids are being held accountable for their actions too, because if not, everything's going to be online. And that's where we're going. Everything is going to be online.
And then if you go there, that social emotional learning, not understanding how to, you're going to have a big problem.
Yeah. Well,
you're going to have a big problem, because Dave, tell the people where they can get you at, Andre.
Website, Interactive Learning Education Consulting, www.ilec-edu.com. We help educators grow and start their own educational consulting firms to be on a path of being profitable, be efficient, and achieving your dreams. So give me a shout. I most definitely look forward to working with you, and I want to make millionaires. That's what I want to do.
Brother Dave?
Right on, brother, right on. You can reach me at dron7@yahoo.com or www.facebook.com. David FMAM Patterson. Phone number 608-343-0875.
Dave, what's that phone number again? One more time.
608-343-0875.
All right.
So, yeah. So, with that being said, of course, you know where to reach me. I'm everywhere. IG, Twitter, Instagram, right. We everywhere. But to make it, and Andre, you can come back anytime, anything on education we're very interested in as we move through this college access phase as well. We're going to continue to paint the solutions. We're going to keep shoving them. When people catch up to us, because they got to catch up with these solutions. When you catch up to the solutions and understand that this resource, these resources, those resources are out here, it's important for you to understand you have to use them. And with that being said, you got to put your families first. Education is so important, right? And it ain't the same, but every day that kid has got to get to school with some tools to learn. With that being said, my name is Calvin Mann. God bless you and encourage me. I'm young. Peace.